Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of our weekly Friday Hacking with Friends stream. Today we have our co-host, Michael 3, James on today. James, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And a fun little update on Michael 1, we've now received a ransom note as a hilarious prank demanding 1,000 Dogecoin in order to get Michael back. Michael likes attention, so I figured this is just another example of him goofing off. But I hope he's having fun in South America, spending all of his money via credit cards and staying out of contact. All right, so James, how are things in the UK?
In what sense? It's cold. I'm inside. What do you mean?
Well, here it's negative 15, and when I throw water outside, it instantly turns to vapor. So, yeah, it's pretty cold.
Okay, it's not that cold here.
Yeah, so today's agenda, by the way, hello to everybody in the chat, Kyle, Garage, and Luca. So today's agenda is we're going to go through some of the InfoSec topics of the week. We're going to show off any tools that we found that seem interesting, if that's applicable. This week we don't have too many tools. We're mostly going to be focusing on some of the different hacker operating systems that we've covered, asking about some other ones we found, and going through some of the stuff that's happened that you've probably seen in the news that we've taken a look at. So without further, and yes, Dogecoin is a future. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And first off, I want to talk about hacker operating systems. So we have had James on as a guest, and he has done an entire series on hacker operating systems. So if we take a look at my screen, we basically have a list that James and I just saw last night that most of these we either haven't covered or haven't heard of. Now, some of these are dead projects, but I just wanted to show you guys like how much we've done. We've done Ubuntu, we have done OpenBSD, we've done Manjaro, we've done Black Arch, we've done, there's Cubes, like Hunix. There's so many different operating systems that we've covered over the last couple of weeks. So if you guys want to see any of the ones on this list, again, some of these seem like they might be dead projects. We only want to cover ones that are currently in use, but if you've used one of these operating systems and you like it, if you see one of these that upon further inspection seems like you really want to learn about it, please let us know and we will try it out. James was mentioning that Backbox seems like it's a port of like Ubuntu or based on Ubuntu, or
Yeah, it's based on Ubuntu. It looks interesting. It's meant to be lightweight, so that could be something to look at. I haven't looked at the other ones, to be honest with you.
yeah, some of the other ones have like very aggressive name like Cyborg Hawk. Like that's a pretty intense sounding operating system name. It's like, oh, I run Windows. You run Ubuntu? What does he run? Cyborg Hawk. I was like, oh, wow. Don't talk to that guy. But yeah, I imagine like if it has a logo, it's probably similarly intense. But we have Knoppix STD, Node 0. We've already done Pen2, Live Hacking OS. That's a pretty like straightforward name for a hacker OS. Deft Linux is something I haven't heard of. Samurai Web Testing Framework. Okay. Parasecurity Forensic OS, we've talked about that already. So, and of course, Kali Linux. So we've actually covered a lot of these. Again, I don't know the source. This could not be an authority. It's just really interesting to see what people are passing around, telling each other, like, this one's the best hacker OS. So, you know, we've said many, many times that there's no, like, best hacker operating system. It's all about, like, what your threat model is, what you're going to be doing with it. Like they all have their advantages and disadvantages depending on what you're trying to do with them. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed the hacker operating system series that we've done. We're at the point now when people are like, hey, you guys should do this operating system. We're just like, we did. Here's the link. So we want to keep it rolling. And if there's any other great operating systems you want us to try, please speak up and let us know in the chat or on the comments on the YouTube channel. So also, if you guys have any questions during the stream, usually we do the Q&A on Wednesdays, but if you have any questions in the stream, we're happy to also answer them because we are looking in the chat. And again, we're fully live today, so that's great. So one question just about operating systems from the chat was, can any operating system track us if we do something illegal? So of course, you shouldn't do something illegal if at all possible, but during the course of security research, sometimes, whoops, you might do something that you weren't aware crossed a certain line. Now, if you have an operating system that's reporting back to somebody about everything you're doing, that could be a problem for you, especially depending on where you live and what your government is allowed to do in terms of spying on you or all this other stuff. So, James, if someone's worried about an operating system tracking you or reporting back, what could someone do about that?
It depends how far you want to go with this. If you're just concerned in terms of the operating system specifically, stay away from Windows 10 and stay away from probably Mac OS as well. But especially lighter Linux distros like Fedora, Debian, or Ubuntu. Not Ubuntu, sorry. Ubuntu may report back. I don't know how much telemetry they have, but Arch, Fedora, Debian, like the base ones especially, and even ones that have a bit more built on top of it, those are going to have almost no telemetry built in. So from a basic level, that's something to think about. Outside of that, I mean, if you're just concerned about the operating system itself reporting back, that should probably do it. But if you want to take a more active approach to defense and privacy and stuff like that, you can go a lot further.
Yeah, and one thing I recommend, this is something I do on my phone, and it's also something that you can do if you want to see what kind of data is coming from a device. If you basically man in the middle, your phone or whatever, let's say your laptop or something, and you want to see what data is coming out of it, like how much telemetry is it sending, taking a look at the DNS request, going into Wireshark and looking at the traffic flowing through. There's also some Hack5 devices. I think like the Packet Squirrel is one of them. Where you can like plug it into Ethernet inline or like, you plug it into Ethernet inline and it allows you to intercept all the traffic going through. Just taking a look at everything flowing out from your computer, for example, and being like, hey, is this information I want going out or is this extra? Do I have any control over this? I was kind of fascinated to see just like mobile applications on my phone, how many different DNS servers they were hitting, how like, if you install an app on your phone, it's probably going to call Facebook at some point, just because they have so many services that app developers use that it's really difficult to get away from your phone calling back to a Facebook server at some point. And I didn't know that until I started examining the traffic and seeing what was really leaking out. So I know the question was about operating systems, but this really applies to any sort of data leak at all. You can do, on your computer, firewall rules for something like on macOS LuLu or Little Snitch that allows you to see what's going out and say, yes, no, do you want to allow it? Or you can take it a step further and just make the actual connection monitor so you can see like, hey, what's actually coming over the Ethernet line coming out of my computer and can I do anything about that? So it's always a little shocking to see like how much information is coming out of a device that you don't send. That's just telemetry or other information, keeping connections alive or keeping applications working. So if you want to really see how much information is coming out of a computer when you're using it that's not generated by the user, it's just background stuff like sent to a server, then I highly recommend just sitting in line with Wireshark and just looking at all the stuff coming out. Because even just DNS name resolution can be startling to know what kind of services your device is reaching out to just because of what's installed on it. Okay, so I think that's all we have for operating systems. James, do you have anything to add?
Nope, it's pretty well covered. Look at our videos if you're thinking of switching from Windows or Linux to something not Windows or Linux, Windows or Mac OS to something Linux based. We have lots of videos now, and we talk about the security benefits on all of them.
So what's our current winner, do you think, for like a beginner-friendly hacker OS? That's not Kali Linux, because that's, easy.
That's to Manjaro.
Manjaro? Okay, so currently our recommendation is Manjaro, although we've tried out a lot of other operating systems, and I think Fedora was also like incredibly easy to get set up and use.
Fedora is the only thing I'm conscious about with Fedora and beginners is that it's not as popular as Arch or Debian-based distributions, so there may not be as much support around. But yeah, it was good operating system.
Yeah, that being said, we do, we really like Parrot SecurityOS as well. It's beautiful, it's great, it's Debian-based, it's familiar, and it's got a great community around it. Not saying that it's not a wonderful operating system. It's just, we're looking for something that is kind of truly different and stretches our knowledge of like Linux a little bit, where we're learning a different like package management system, like we're on a different architecture than Debian. Like it's kind of nice to get out and try something new. So yeah, not saying that Parrot SecurityOS isn't good. We haven't really mentioned it as much, but it's actually our most popular video. Our most popular like live stream video on any operating system is on Parrot SecurityOS. So yeah, kind of surprising how much interest there is around that project. But we would love to cover more of it if you guys want to see more about Parrot SecurityOS, maybe more advanced stuff you could do, or trying to do something like put it on the Raspberry Pi or do something it's not maybe as known for. So all right, let's go on to another story I do not know too much about, but James does and is happy to talk about. So what's going on
Yes.
with this project Red thing? What's going on with that?
So let me. I don't know exactly what date this happened, but it was sometime within the kind of the past week. CD Projekt Red, so the developers of Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher 3, those kind of people, they had a breach and their data was ransomed. They recovered their data from their backups, as you know, everybody tells you to make backups for stuff like this, but the attackers made off with their data and basically said, pay us or we will release the data or sell it to somebody. And they basically said, no, we are not going to pay you anything or negotiate with you. So since then, the source code to a card game made by them called Gwent, I think, was released publicly, and that's been circulating. And since then, the Cyberpunk 2077 source code, along with I think The Witcher 3 or other games, has been auctioned off, and supposedly the starting bid was like $1 million. So lots of money going on here. I don't actually know how the hackers got in. I think there was like a murmuring that it was something to do with the new modding system in Cyberpunk 2077, but I'm not sure about that at all because I don't know where I read that and I cannot find it in any of these articles. But yes, so they got the game source code and they also got several private documents from CDPR. So not
Wow.
a good year for CDPR overall with
Yeah, no, for real. So let's talk about, like, from an attacker's perspective, what happened here. Like, if you're an attacker and you're like a cyber criminal and you break into a company that has a lot of business going on and they have creative content, they have a lot of data that's important to them. What happens here is you can do a couple of different things in order to get a return on what you've done. You can either try to destroy the data, and especially if you know that they don't keep backups, then ransomware is the route that a lot of kind of lower skilled attackers go. Or, if there's no real way of selling the data or making it useful in another way. If, for example, all you have is employment records or criminal records or education records or something else that, like, your institution cannot function without this thing, then ransomware is usually the way that you go. And in this case, it seems like they made a pretty serious attempt to destroy the data, but the company was managing their backups properly and was able to restore from them. So while they didn't experience a huge loss from ransomware, they did have the data stolen, copied, and exfiltrated as well. So that is a whole other ballgame. Because if you just want to, like, run in, smash everything up, and then expect people to pay you in order to get the data back, that's a relatively simple attack compared to, like, both doing that and then also, stealing the information. To me, like, this sounds like someone that, like, needs money or wants money very strongly and like knows the best way to do this. So it reminds me, I mean, nobody's attributed this, nobody knows who it is, but it reminds me of some of the attacks that were linked to, like, basically, like, countries like North Korea trying to raise money around international sanctions by, like, doing low-level, easy-to-commit cybercrime. Because if you're paying attention to exploits or if you're developing your own 0 days or able to buy them on the black market, then you can just go ahead and target these companies that have made mistakes and make a huge return of like $1 million just by going through the standard like attacker playbook of, all right, what's the most damage I can do if I'm just doing ransomware? And then if ransomware isn't likely to succeed, or if it's just icing on the cake, is there any way I can take this data and sell it and make a profit on it as well? So it seems like these attackers are determined to sell the information to whoever wants it. And James, what do you think these people want with the source code of this game?
What do the
The buyers.
ransomware group? Oh, the buyers
Yeah.
probably releasing cracked versions of the game and or writing exploits for the game. I don't know if they have an online version yet, but that's certainly a market because there are going to be exploits left in that code that they can keep going through for a long time to write like video game cheats. And it's one thing to like try and find out how to cheat in a game without access to the source code, but if you can look at everything and be like, oh yeah, there's another buffer overflow, it's like, it's it's like it's like you're walking around on the inside of the project. It's going to be a lot easier to find security vulnerabilities to exploit for them.
Wait,
I
wait,
can't
wait.
think of another reason.
Wait, you think that they spent $1 million to cheat at video games?
No, to sell the cheats is what I'm saying.
Ah, okay. I guess that kind of makes sense. Yeah, there would be like a whole like gray black market industry of people who like want to be able to cheat at these games. But of course, like as soon as they're patched, they're patched. I was gonna say, if I wanted to do a massive watering hole campaign where I go after anybody who likes a particular game who might happen to have a technical related job, maybe the defense contractor, or at some sort of industry where I'm more interested in, I could just basically drop like ripped versions of the game. Like if you can set like basically make it so it's possible to post free versions of the game for anybody who wants to pirate it from the source code, but build in backdoors and other malware that allow you to get into people's computers, build botnets, otherwise infect people's systems. You basically have a treasure trove of information you can use to build exploits into things that everybody wants and then release them in a form that is impossible to stop. So, like, I remember there's a lot of campaigns that were allegedly conducted by China where they would take software that everybody wanted, they would pirate it, and then they would put it up on, like, the Pirate Bay. And so many people would download it, run it, whatever, and it was the perfect vector for infecting all these people who just wanted to get something paid for free. So by acquiring the source code for all these games and stuff, like these people are now able to basically pop up versions of this game everywhere that anybody who wants to save a buck will be able to install on their computer, run whatever. And yes, like does it damage the company who, should have like supposedly should have paid them the ransom according to the attackers? Well, yeah, it's kind of the consequence of not paying the ransom. But at the same time, it's an extra bonus of being able to have a massive like malware botnet or access to very sensitive computers of people who work at sensitive jobs. And those are the kinds of campaigns where I would pay $1 million maybe if I had the resources to be able to see the internet with infected versions of these highly popular games.
That's one aspect of it. Zam just said to get in-game items and sell them on the open market. I suspect that's one thing that they'll be doing if they can develop cheats for the game. But another possible vector is that I just thought of. I don't know how viable this would be, but they just released a modding system for Cyberpunk 2077. So if there's potentially a vulnerability within the mod system, maybe they could distribute mods to the normal versions of the game if they find a vulnerability within there. And then, somebody downloads a mod that looks good, looks like it's something official, but then actually it infects their computer. So that could be. I mean, it depends because once you have, insider knowledge on a program that you're running and trusting on your computer, there's a lot of potential vectors there that can be opened up. So it depends really. But
Yeah, that's actually a good point because if you're like a nation state again that wants to, let's say, do a watering hole attack where your goal is anybody that's running this video game, you want to be able to try to infect them and see if their computer, has anything useful on it. If they work at a useful organization, if anything about it is something that lets you do something else. While being able to take a look at the way the game works, finding maybe a vulnerable server or a server that isn't well protected that the game connects back to and maybe downloads something from and executes, like being able to look inside the source code, find a circumstance like that, and then go after a target that's not that difficult for you to attack in order to go to affect everybody who's running the game. That's the kind of attack that would make this sort of information worth $1 million, in my opinion. All right.
There's lots of potential things that could be done. We'll see. I guess I don't have it downloaded, and I'm glad I don't because I'm staying away from anything CDPR for a minute now because with people that have access to the source of probably because the stuff that's being publicized is they have their game source code, but they have their own game launcher. That source is probably in the hands of those people too, if I had to guess. So I don't have anything by them installed right now out of precaution, but we shall see.
Yikes! Yeah, that's very spooky. So, all right, moving on to another source of information that I really like to share for anybody who's interested in OSINT. Mike Bazell puts out a series of books that is kind of like foundational for anybody who wants to learn about OSINT. And he also has a really great podcast where he covers a number of different OSINT topics that come up that week and also advances people's knowledge of OSINT tools. So I just wanted to refer anybody who's interested in OSINT and wants to stay up on this stuff. This podcast is really great. He always has good guests on. And in particular, we've talked a lot about tracking, like how we can do URL tracking, canary tokens, Grabify, all that sort of stuff. So he has a good episode on the privacy implications of analytics, which is basically the same thing as us sending, a tracking code. Websites do this legitimately all the time to gather as much information as they can. So you can learn a little bit about like what the implications of blocking this are, how to do it, and otherwise. He also goes through some data breaches that have happened. So if you want to stay up on that, again, highly recommend this podcast. I don't watch or listen to a lot of podcasts, but Mike's is really great for anybody that's curious about OSINT and what's going on in the OSINT community. I have yet to find another one that is as good. So it's a really great resource for anybody looking for one. All right, you want to talk about Florida?
Florida? What happened in Florida? Oh, is that where the water thing was?
That's where the water thing was. Of course it happened in Florida. Where else but Florida would it happen?
Where else? Yeah, sure. So a hacker apparently got into a water treatment facility through Teamviewer, which I thought was pretty interesting, is apparently how this guy got in, and apparently he got in on 2 separate occasions. On the first one, he was just moving around, accessing various programs. And then the second time around, he tried to increase the sodium hydroxide content from about 100 parts per million to 11,000 parts per million. So that would not be good. There were other safe, what do you call them? I don't know, failbacks in place so that this wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have actually gone through and gotten to the water supply, but it's pretty interesting that somebody managed to get in twice through TeamViewer and get into infrastructure. I always find it pretty scary when people target infrastructure like this, because it's generally overlooked in terms of cybersecurity. But if you were like a foreign nation and you had a problem, Stuxnet, that's targeted infrastructure in whichever country it was, and that was
Iran.
That had big implications.
So one thing that I need to be clear about here is like this was not Stuxnet. Like these people had set up TeamViewer on a computer that was connected to the internet that like allowed remote administration of the controls to directly do the thing that they attempted to do. So like there's many different levels of attack against infrastructure. Some of them extremely sophisticated and hard to detect, and probably ongoing and undetected, and some of them more easy to detect. Now, let's talk about Stuxnet. Stuxnet was, we had these highly specialized computers that were off-grid. They were like not connected to any internet or anything, that you needed to spread malware that was so discriminating and so subtle that nobody noticed it infected like all these USB sticks until someone finally walked a USB stick over and manually plugged it into the computer. That's the level of sophistication we're talking about with Stuxnet. With this, some dude set up TeamViewer so anybody could log in and made the credentials not so good. And the guy who was sitting behind the monitor had one of these moments where he's like, oh no, the mouse is moving. Oh no, it's opening a thing. Oh, it opened. I'm seeing a lot of terminal scrolling. So this dude, whose job is to just like, press a couple buttons per day and like make sure things are fine, sees that the computer has gone haywire and is doing stuff by itself, and just immediately calls a supervisor. Is like, sir, the computer's haunted. Should I shoot it? Because this is Florida. And they're like, no, don't shoot it. We need to figure out who's in there. And then they were like, okay, a guy got it. And then like as they're doing that, I guess he like tries to do this other thing and they reverse it. But like it was really interesting that this was not like somebody dropping highly sophisticated malware that infects the controllers, and then like slowly this changes it without their knowledge over several months and ramps up and sends like false sensor readings. This guy just like pressed the big red button to like increase the supply, and like like maybe they would have noticed that there's other safeguards that probably would have prevented this. The point here is like this was not a sophisticated cyber attack. It was an example of how a blundering cyber attack that like just like immediately slapped towards like the big red button of like the worst thing you could do, like visibly to anybody that was looking at the monitor was still almost successful. So it's kind of shocking because let's say that this was a nation state. Like if they got access to Teamviewer, they would have waited until no one was looking, opened a PowerShell window, dropped a single obfuscated command that like built a backdoor and started doing everything in the background. And there would have been no opportunity to see some dude dragging around Teamviewer and like, you know, like manually inputting commands. Like this they would have dropped some sort of, they would have identified what was running on the system. They would have dropped some 0-day that would have waited, and they would have covered their tracks in a way that made it difficult to detect until the disaster had already happened. So just saying, those are the attacks that we are worried about. This is an attack that shows just how simple it is to execute those attacks, even for someone that doesn't know about all the stuff I just said.
Yeah. So this is as Cody, you were saying, this is not a sophisticated attack. This is more negligent on the part of the water company than anything else. That they had, I guess, Teamviewer set up, presumably misconfigured so that it was easy to dig into like this.
Oh, and running Windows 7, Zam says.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, that's not good. But yeah, there were like other safeguards in place that would have stopped like hard systems that test the water automatically, that would have noticed and stopped this from actually going into the water supply. But it is, in my opinion, scary that somebody with presumably a very low level of skill got in this easily. And the other thing that I don't think you picked up, I mentioned, but I don't think you picked up on, is this guy actually went in twice. So presumably he went in and started doing stuff once, and then they locked him out and like closed TeamViewer, and then he just came back in and then did this. So I guess like the first time around they're like, maybe it was a one-time thing. Just a fluke. Like, I don't know.
It's just a mess. If you're in charge of the water, you know, like there's no such thing as a fluke when it comes to somebody like trying to press that button. Like if your computer screen just goes haywire and it starts accessing programs like that you didn't ask it to, like it's probably something like a little bit more wrong. So yeah, it's a little spooky that like the response here was initially like not that escalated, but then finally when it became clear that this person's intention was extremely malicious, they finally did what was necessary to secure the system. There are systems like this all over the country that are in charge of critical infrastructure. That could be power, that could be water, that could be gas. And it's really, it's quite spooky to know that a lot of these have, you know, remote links that are using passwords that might not be secure. These are, you know, old IT systems that are not well maintained or otherwise might not be set up to the proper specifications, and that makes attacks like this all the more likely and possible. So expect to see infrastructure attacks like this actually succeed in the future, because while this one did not, it does kind of pave the way for why this is a problem and why without substantial investment in infrastructure, we're going to start seeing these things pop up more in the future. All right, on that bright and cheery note, let's talk about TikTok. James, you're TikTok famous, aren't you?
Oh yeah, you know me.
Yeah, so we got a wonderful comment on actually the SecurityFWD channel that was, please take those ugly stickers off your laptop. It doesn't add any credibility. Thanks for the video, though. And I responded on TikTok and instead decided to share a little bit about why hackers like to put stickers on their laptops and what they mean. So I even called out a couple of my favorite stickers and why, you know, I relate to them. So you can see I have like Kismet Wireless, and I have like a hackerspace that I've been to in Norway, and I also have, of course, Spacehoon, who hopefully is on the stream. So I posted this on TikTok, and they immediately took it down for harassment and bullying, even though I would contend that I was the one being bullied in this video. And it's been down for a week, but it just went up this morning. So if you'd like to check out some of the stuff that we're making on TikTok, the account is at Hackbyte, HAKBYTE, and you can find that on the link tree at hack.gay as well. But yeah, so we don't make a lot of cybersecurity content for TikTok lately because they keep taking down our videos for harassment and bullying, which means that nobody watches our videos when they finally come up like a week later, because by then it's old news and the algorithm doesn't show it. So yeah, that's why we don't make more TikTok videos. But if you're curious about why hackers have stickers, then there you go. And I'm going to make a series on explaining what exactly each sticker means for some of my favorite ones. So stay tuned for that if you guys want to see it. All right.
Also, man, just let us have our stickers. Stickers are fun.
Come on, right? Like, it's one of those, like, I'm sorry, you don't look professional enough to be a hacker. Those stickers make you look like you don't care about professionalism. I'm just like, if you wanted us, like, somebody who doesn't think outside the box, like, then there's lots of options, buddy. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, yeah, so...
He's never been to a hacking convention, clearly.
No, it's funny that, like, people gatekeep in all sorts of ways. Like, you know, I've had people pick on my appearance, and also, like, we had our friend Nick come on the Null Byte show, and he's like a straight white male that's like going to a really good, like a nationally recognized school for like science and engineering, and like they're just like, bro, like, you need to wash your face before you, and just like all these like mean comments to this just like regular dude that's that's sincerely trying to teach people about like hacking and stuff. So like, yeah, there's all sorts of like gatekeeping, and I guess like stickers are the new thing that that will be picked on. Add that to the list of operating systems, my face, and then the fact that I don't blink. Although that one I don't mind so much. So, but anyway, yeah, that was a very funny like call out that we got for I guess lacking professionalism. But this is like, like, I'm sorry, but you don't go up to like some dude that's got like some intense like a tattoo of all like their favorite stuff, and you're just like, bro, I think that looks unprofessional. Like, you should really get that stuff lasered off. I think that you know, I don't think that's a good look for you. But anyway, enough about that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Objective-C. Their LuLu tool has been updated. So if you use a macOS system and you care about security, Objective-C makes some of the best security tools out there. They are free. They're made by our good friend Patrick Wardle, who makes a lot of really great tools. So if you want to take a look at a awesome tool for, they even do reverse DNS lookup. That way, anytime a program on your computer tries to call out to a service that hasn't called out to before, you'll get a notification and you can decide whether or not you trust it and if you want it to be able to connect. I think that this is a really good way to make sure that nothing on your computer is acting suspiciously, because one of the first things that a piece of malware will do is try to establish command and control. And what Patrick's tools do is look for specific suspicious behavior rather than trying to find like an antivirus signature or something like that. It looks for the kinds of behavior that a malicious program would do and alerts the user in real time. So I think this is some of the best like defense in depth you can have on a macOS computer, and I really recommend anyone with a macOS computer to try this out, because if this resolves to some like, you know, sketchy domain that you've never seen before and it doesn't make sense, then maybe, you know, block curl if it's just suddenly connecting to some like weird process you've never seen before. It's also really awesome that Apple has recently rolled back some changes that neutered programs like this and prevented you from being able to see certain programs and what they were connecting to, and basically allowed them a back door, I guess, to like connect back to whatever they wanted to. So now that that has been closed, this is, again, a really comprehensive and great tool for anyone who cares about macOS security. Like James, right? Your favorite operating system, macOS.
Gosh, get that thing away from me.
I think you would feel differently if someone bought one for you, but we'll wait for that day to happen.
Nobody's buying me a MacBook, Cody, don't worry.
Wait, do you remember what happened when Stefan got a new MacBook? He went from having aggressively putting out stickers that had the the red circle with the cross through it, like around the Apple sign, like to having a MacBook Pro as his like primary computer.
Yeah, okay. I'm
It's
not
a slippery.
buying one.
It's a slippery slope. That's all I'm saying. We'll see. We'll play back this stream in like a year or so, see what happens. All right, so
This one.
So did you hear about the supply chain hack against 35 different companies, including PayPal, Microsoft, and Apple, that basically involved package naming in Python with some of their tools for updating and installing libraries?
I didn't hear a lot about it until you mentioned it. I'd seen that some security researcher found this crazy thing that affected all these people, and I thought that was pretty interesting, but didn't have time to look into it. So
Right. So cutting through all this, I mean, it's this is a pretty incredible attack. So here we have an example of pip install package name, which is James. What does that mean? Have you ever used Python before? You know what that does?
Yes, yeah. That's how you just install a like library in Python, basically, from the um, what's their repository called? I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah. So what was interesting about this attack is that the researcher was able to poke around in code that was basically shared from internal libraries that reference other libraries that were internal, like so names of software projects that were internal to these companies. And what they were able to do is once they knew the name of an internal library, they were able to push an updated version of that library publicly. So what would happen is that when somebody at that company tried to install the internal library, they would instead install the researcher's public library that had been backdoored. So this caused a bunch of chaos because the package system had no way of really having a distinction between the local libraries and the public libraries that had been discovered through this kind of data leak. So the end result was being able to arbitrarily replace libraries that people on the inside of these companies were using with a version that actually would do all sorts of bad stuff. And he was able to demonstrate this, and it had a very widespread effect. So this sort of supply chain attack is, something that's a lot of different companies are vulnerable to when they use these sorts of package management systems that pull from public libraries as well as private repositories that are kind of behind the how would I say it, like behind the safe space in these companies where they feel like it's okay to deploy these things. In a lot of cases, it's actually easier to swap out these packages than it seemed at first. So if you're using these package managers, they could serve you up a malicious version of a library, that your company wrote without you ever knowing it. And that's kind of the issue here. So pretty crazy. And also very spooky for anybody that just arbitrarily installs like a package in Python without really thinking about what's happening there.
It's lucky that a security researcher found this, because this could have been an absolutely massive cyber attack if somebody like, I don't know, North Korea had thought of this. Think about all the companies they could have got into using this attack. I don't think that guy got paid enough. I think he got paid like 130 grand all in all with all the companies that he demonstrated this to. But yes, I feel like he should have gotten more, because something like all the companies that he got into, that's pretty nuts to me. But
reading through this, he also used DNS to exfiltrate all the exfiltrate information from the companies who were breached by this to kind of beacon back and let them know who had been affected by it. And he also noted that the package.json files were some of the of JavaScript files were some of the juiciest places to look for some of the names of these internal files they could use to backdoor the process basically like backdoor the process of installing the file for some other dependency. So what's interesting is somebody might be installing some other totally different thing, but then that internal project is a dependency, and then this backdoor would be added to that project as a matter of installing it with pip or one of these other installers. So there's also a note that JavaScript or Ruby is not, let's see. Oh yeah, so they were just noting that JavaScript susceptibility doesn't mean that Python or Ruby are less susceptible. So this is definitely an attack that goes beyond just a single package manager, and these sorts of attacks need to really be examined by companies that use them internally. So really interesting how many companies this ended up affecting, because it seemed like a pretty small deal until you realize at scale this can really be used to go after companies that use Python or use other package management systems they don't own or control themselves.
It's an attack vector that people haven't really considered up till now, it seems like. And if you're a targeted attack like this directly towards developers, means that you're going to get into lots of high value targets. Like, it's kind of by nature, most software is developed for businesses. So that's the thing there. And Sam just said this could have been bigger than SolarWinds, and he's absolutely right. It could have been much bigger than SolarWinds if this got into the wrong hands before it was realized. So hopefully now everybody puts good practices into place around this. But Anyhow.
Oh, yeah. So Fowl was also mentioning that typo squatting is super common. So typo squatting means like if you have a really, really common, like if you have a really common package and then you also create a package that's the same thing, but maybe one key off that's like very likely for people to accidentally mash. Or if you get a couple packages that are all like centered around that package, you can make it so people accidentally install that package by just executing a typo, and boom, you've just managed to insert code into someone's computer because they mashed the wrong key. So it's a tough world out there for people using and installing like libraries and packages that they don't actually own. You can constantly fall victim to this sort of stuff if you're not careful. So just a reminder for anybody that thinks it's like a totally safe thing to do to just like pip install something. Like you could get in trouble and accidentally make a typo and then have downloaded a malicious version of that package instead. So that kind of blows my mind, but it happened to these big companies, so it could potentially happen to you. So there's a lot of fuss about the new RISC-V ESP32C3. C3, I thought it was S3. I guess I'm a little behind on it. But anyway, so the ESP32 has been the evolution of the ESP8266 platform, but it suffered from a couple things that hold it back from truly replacing the ESP8266 or being more useful to people in other applications. One of those is native USB, like the ability to mount itself as a USB drive and drag and drop files between means that you're stuck communicating over serial for everything, and that can be really annoying for people who are just getting started. For people like Adafruit who want to get beginners into programming, the ability to drag and drop something like a CircuitPython program onto a board is really attractive because it allows them to keep their tutorials really short and to the point, and it means that there's less fuss for getting projects out the door when it comes to working with these. They're also more powerful and have the ability to do I believe, I'm not going to say whether or not, oh no, it does have Bluetooth, okay. So if you have a Bluetooth project you're interested in, that's something you can do, as well as Wi-Fi, which is something that the ESP8266 can't do. So there's some earlier versions of the ESP32 before the S2 and before I guess the C3 that just kind of lack the stuff you would want to fully transition over to a different chip. But it looks like all that is changing now. So if you're looking for a microcontroller that probably has a bright future as a common developer platform for Wi-Fi hacking or Wi-Fi and Bluetooth related sniffing stuff, then the ESP32 C3 is definitely something that you should check out. So it also looks like it's going to be quite cheap. So I'm really excited about this. Stefan has gotten a sample of the new ESP32. I thought it was S3 chip, but I think maybe this is the reduced price one. I don't know. I'm going to have to check with him. But either way, it's really exciting to see these new chips rolling out because we've got a lot of requests. The only thing they don't do that we've gotten tons of requests for are, is the ability to connect to like a 5 gigahertz network or scan 5 gigahertz devices. Unfortunately, there's like one Texas Instruments chip that actually is able to do that, and it is quite expensive and not a good candidate for replacing the ESP32 even. So this is kind of, I guess, the future development for easy to work with IoT, like hacker modules that the community supports pretty well. But I will say it was kind of interesting to see how much more quickly the Raspberry Pi Pico was able to get up and running on all these languages, on all these platforms, just because they work, I think, a little bit better with the developer community. And Espressif kind of just like puts out stuff and then expects people to react to it. Whereas the Raspberry Pi Foundation went a bit more out of their way to make sure that there was support for their project before it was released. So cons on this is it'll probably be a while before it's fully supported by some development platforms like Arduino IDE, CircuitPython, like things like that. But we'll see. It's just Espressif has a history of being a little bit sluggish when it comes to that. Although if somebody from Espressif is watching this, please give me free hardware and I'll say nicer things about your stuff. All right.
No bias.
No bias. Well, because I'll be able to test it. But
Exactly.
also, just in general. So, James, you've seen that the news has been all a tizzy about the new phishing attack using Morse code to hide malicious URLs.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that if you like, about
Please.
what the attack was. So, looking at the Hackaday article is what I'm looking at. Somebody used Morse code. Everybody focuses on the Morse code aspect of this. I think it's a pretty small part of what actually happened, and it's just kind of the novelty of using Morse code is pretty creative. But somebody used Morse code in their phishing payload, it seems like, to obfuscate a phishing attack that opened a web page. And what did it do? It opened a web page, or it opened a JS, it launched a JS file, sorry, that asked for a Office 365 login. So it seems like a phishing attack that you would get in the form of an email. But normally attacks like this are kind of found by AVs blacklisting them, and then everybody's antivirus stops it. So what attackers will do is they will obfuscate the code of their payload, basically, sorry. And usually they use encryption and all sorts of funky stuff to do this, but you have to get creative because otherwise the AVs will figure out what you're doing and blacklist you. So it's a cat and mouse game, but this is a pretty unique approach to keeping your payload's intentions hidden.
Okay. Couple things here. I know that we're all bored and we're all in isolation and we're looking for, novel stories, but it looks like a child that learned JavaScript wrote this. I guess it's like creative, but this is like, first of all, I know like mobile applications that will do this where you can like type something in and it converts it to Morse code. so like, that's cool. But like, it looks like they included, like the function says decode Morse code. Like, so it's not like, just like examining the code. There was no attempt for like really obfuscating what was going on here. Like the point of most, like, okay, this looked like it was like getting around URL blacklisting. And that's like all. Like their only goal was to hide that it was going to like a probably already blacklisted like URL. And everything else was just like in plain text. And you could just see that it says decode Morse code. So like the mystery of like what this is doing is not, because it's all in plain text right here. I don't know, like there's some like truly creative like exfiltration techniques where like, they'll really run the gauntlet of like sending out all these like DNS requests that are like randomized, but the randomization is actually like a key, and like there's like all these like layers of deception. But this was just like very straight up like, here is the URL. I will write a very short JavaScript like library or JavaScript function to translate like a URL into a bunch of dots and dashes, and we are done. Which to me sounds like maybe like the like 7th or 8th exercise you might get in a programming class once you learn functions in JavaScript, with the exception of the like kind of like crappy phishing page that they also popped up. It actually doesn't look that bad. Like this phishing page doesn't look
fine.
Yeah, it looks okay. So if you have like a pre-made phishing page that already looks pretty good, and then like a 8th grade like level knowledge of JavaScript, then boom, apparently you can make the bleeping computer news too. Oh, also,
I mean, this is the thing.
Criminal intentions.
This is the thing though. So like Val just said, it's still pretty easy to build detection for it. Next version will probably contain Braille, which is pretty funny.
Do Braille.
The whole like idea of this is that this is not like a complicated piece of malware, or it's not a complicated phishing scam. It's really basic stuff, but it's just the whole point of obfuscation is that you need to do something unique to hide your data so that it's not already blacklisted or detectable. And this is just a funny way to do that. So that's why so many people picked up on it, I think. But
yeah, I mean, typically you would use like public private key encryption, or like something like where like it would, there's so many different ways of doing it, you guys. Like, it could like pull down like a picture from the internet that has the key in it, and that could decrypt some. There's so many ways that it could do this, but it doesn't. So, what do you?
It's just a laugh. It's just a laugh, isn't it?
It's just silly. Let's all take a moment to laugh at this. So we've also, moving on, we've done a couple videos on barcode hacking. So this is where you take like a table dump or something and put it into a barcode, and then you try it out on like one of those handheld barcode scanners to see if it'll trigger it to do something weird. We've covered this on Null Byte, but this was actually something a little bit different. This is when the barcode scanner itself hacks you. So apparently there were some barcode scanners that people were using that were aggressively installing adware on their computers. Of course, this is nothing like incredibly novel, but if you go through, oh, actually, that's so generic. I need to real quick make sure I don't have that one on my phone.
In Soviet Russia, barcode scanner hack you.
Yes, barcode scanner. No, I don't have it. Okay, cool. So like for any phone that doesn't have a built-in barcode scanner, which they should, you can just type in barcode scanner, and the first result will aggressively begin to install unwelcome programs that give notifications, do all sorts of other creepy tracking stuff. So sometimes installing something to be able to quickly read a barcode or something else can be a major point of vulnerability for somebody doing a lot of bad stuff on your computer. On your smartphone. So if you have this, it's been removed from Google Play, but it has not been removed from mobile devices. So you're going to want to go ahead and uninstall Barcode Scanner if you have it on your phone. Because apparently, while they were able to remove it from the Play Store, they're not like automatically removing it, even though it's been determined to be like something that shouldn't have been put on the Play Store. So yeah, just be aware. Sometimes Barcode Scanner hacks you. And that was a great Soviet Russia joke. I'm sorry, I didn't acknowledge it more, James.
Thank you.
So that's going to do it for most of the news items we had. And also, hello, Victor. Welcome to the stream. Yes, we did discuss the Florida water hack earlier, and it was hilarious. But yeah, one thing I want to do a shout out for is it's really exciting that the Null Byte channel that we started, I started years ago, has finally hit 700,000 subscribers. That is an absolutely huge number, considering that when I originally proposed this project, the people in charge told me that it was a bad idea and that I shouldn't do it. I proceeded to make the first 3 episodes for free without their permission and publish them anyway. And after the response we got, we barely got permission to get paid very, very little to produce the next like 50 or so episodes, at which point we finally got enough traction to begin expanding our production team and doing what we do today. So while I don't currently make any new Null Byte episodes, we might do a live stream with them in the future, and it's really cool to see how big the channel has grown to. We are also, of course, on the Hack5 channel that is also going to hit 700,000 subscribers in the near future. So it's really exciting to be on these really big channels and be able to teach so many people about cybersecurity. So really, really cool, and very awesome that we have so many people that are also interested in hacking and the hacking community. Can't really read the YouTube comments on this one anymore because they've spun violently out of control, but it's still really great to see the response we get on all these videos. So yeah, very cool. And of course, we also have a milestone. The SecurityFWD channel is coming up on 9,000 subscribers, which tells me we're going to be hitting 10,000 really soon. That is incredible for a channel that is as young as ours. I'm really blown away by how quickly we've gotten this up and running. And of course, it's all thanks to everyone who joins us every week and shares our channel with anyone who might be interested. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe and continue to share our content because, yeah, we really like the community that it has created. And it's amazing to see the growth that we've managed to get in this short period of time. So I'm going to go back to some questions from the audience because that's most of what I had to say. And one of them was just what programming languages that we know. I think it was for what I know, but James, you know far more, I think, languages than I do. Because I know...
How many languages do you know?
I know a little bit of C++, which is basically also Arduino, and then Python / MicroPython / CircuitPython, which is all just Python.
Okay.
And you, James?
I'm going to forget some. So most of what I do right now is Rust, Python, and C#. But I also work with JavaScript, TypeScript, which is basically JavaScript. What else? I don't know. C++, PHP. I work with most stuff. It's the thing about programming is once you kind of have learned a few languages, especially like if you know Python and C or something like that, or even C#, it doesn't matter as long as you know like how to use Python and a typed language. And usually through learning Python, you learn like the logic, and then once you get the idea of types around your head, it's pretty easy to pick up a new one generally because you just have to learn the syntax and the concepts tend to be pretty similar. So that's I don't know. I don't think it's like I can use lots of programming languages, but if you know two, you pretty much have seen them all. I feel like if you're just writing code. So
Uh, I I had to scroll up through the chat and saw that people were like fighting earlier. And sorry, please be nice to the kid who says he's a hacker. Anyway, I think that's so one question we had is you talk about programming, but do you get the soldering iron out much? James, how about you? Do you solder many things lately?
solder many things? No, I have like a $10 eBay soldering iron.
Ooh, sounds dangerous.
Oh yeah,
My
it
first
probably
two
is.
soldering irons were so dangerous that like every time I decided to solder anything was like a super like sometimes also I had one that was like adjustable, but the knob on it would turn all the way to the highest setting. So I would like turn it on, plug it in, walk away, come back, and it would be cherry red. And like the tip would start to be like sagging like a little bit. I was like, oh wow, that's really hot. Like oops. So yeah, the
Yeah.
cheap soldering irons are really scary. So when I went to C3, Stefan insisted on having me try out his like portable soldering iron. I think it was the TS100, and I immediately burned him with it. Like the first thing I did was like I was soldering something and I like just like touched his finger or something by accident and it burned him badly. So I knew it was a great soldering iron. So I immediately
You
purchased it.
you did what? I thought you were joking. What, you burned
No,
stuff up?
yeah, no, we were in the hardware hacking area, like putting together our build badges, and I remember he was like over me, like showing me something, and I like went up with it, and I just like burned him so badly, and I felt terrible about it, but I was just like, damn, this is a great soldering iron. So I went home, I bought it, and then I upgraded it to the TS80. And the difference between the TS80 and the TS100, I might be getting them confused, but in general, the difference between the high end and the low end portable soldering iron of the TS series is the higher end one has USB Type C, and it has like a headphone jack style interface for the different soldering iron tips that you can use. So you can have like 4 different ones and just like unplug them, plug them back in like you're plugging in headphones. Super cool. The lower end one has and it uses USB Type C, but you have to have like a certain kind of like power source in order for it to. You can't just plug it into your laptop power source like I thought I could because I thought I was a genius. Just having one I could use for any of my USB Type-C stuff. It doesn't work that way. But I did manage to get like a really compact charger for it that allows me to use it wherever I am, that I can plug into a mobile battery, for example, and solder anywhere without having to have proprietary stuff mostly, except the power brick. Super cool. The lower end one, you have to undo a screw in order to change out the heads or the different soldering iron tips. So like if it's already hot, you kind of got to wait for it to cool down or expect that you might like burn your fingers or need a way of like move it like swapping it out. So it's substantially less convenient, I would say, than the higher end one. And it also has like the barrel style power adapter that's like, like kind of proprietary. So like you got to bring around an extra cable if you want to have this with you all the time. Now that being said, I solder stuff a lot, both because Michael gets into IoT projects that involve sensors and he's too much of a coward to solder them himself, so he forces me to. And also because we get a lot of orders on our website, hackerinterchange.com, sometimes for like Wi-Fi ducts that need to be soldered together, so I need to do some soldering. I also made a TikTok video on like what kind of stuff I have in my hacker bag, and the soldering iron is like the #1 thing that I have packed away in there if I'm going to be doing any sort of prototyping, because prototyping is super easy to do with microcontrollers, and if you want to make it not fly apart as soon as you put it inside your bag, then it really pays to know a little bit of what you're doing with the soldering iron. That being said, I've been doing some perf boarding lately, and it's terrible. I forgot how annoying perf boarding is. It actually sucks, but it's still really fun to just like make random little projects every so often to make quarantine a little bit less boring. So if you want a specific example, then my current soldering project that I'm working on, I think I have a photo of it somewhere, is this. So I've turned this into a breadboard. Okay, so you can see it. It's on perfboard now. So I've actually now attached the screen to this, and I have a ESP32 on a perf board that is reading the temperature from an outdoor sensor. And I've soldered this all together, and it's all in like a little perf board. It's all like one unit. And it was a really fun project to do because I'm, not putting that much work into it. But as soon as I start working more with perf boards, they're really, really annoying to work with. But yeah, so I love these little projects just for like having something to do and like taking an idea and making a prototype that will stay together for longer than like a day or two. Because if you don't do this and you just like keep everything wired together like the way I have here in my initial prototype phase, like in the back here, eventually these wires will get ripped out and it'll, it won't look so pretty. So yeah, I solder a lot and I really enjoy it. So if you're looking for a fun hobby during the pandemic, then highly recommend soldering stuff, especially because we have a lot of Stefan's soldering kit badges, and I've been meaning to do a class. So I'm curious if you guys would be interested in like a little bit of information on like soldering or putting together electronics, like what it looks like to make a prototype like this and like how to solder, then we could definitely do something like that on the future. The line between like makers and hackers is very blurry, especially when we work with people like Stefan who makes hardware prototypes all the time. So it's a subject I'm really interested in, and if you guys are too, please let me know and we would be happy to cover it. Can a USB soldering iron be referred to as high end? What a gatekeeping question, Jonathan. Yes, it absolutely can. If you're one of those people that is going to tell me I have to spend like $400 on like a soldering iron like desk setup in order to be considered serious,
Hot air station.
And like a hot air station. Now, that being said, I have a dangerous hot air station and a half decent soldering iron, but mostly like I do rapid prototyping like on site. Like if I'm like somewhere and I need to like throw together like a Wi-Fi microcontroller and like a passive infrared sensor and then like an alarm or a laser or something like that, I can do that in like an hour or two, solder that stuff together, and I'm not looking to do production style work. And oh my gosh, you guys, when I did that video on just like basic prototype soldering, I produced like a perfectly viable, like I think it was like a sensor or something that I did like kind of a sloppy job soldering it, but it was not that bad. Everything works fine, it's still working. And I got the meanest comments from like soldering snobs. I forget that like the maker community has people that like are really serious about like their opinions about like the soldering temperature, like everything. So I got dragged from everything from like my technique, the amount of solder I was leaving on it. I got like a mean comment about like how I was obviously ignorant because I set my soldering temperature to the exact temperature that the solder company I was using said, like in their like online training. Yeah, you can't do anything right sometimes when it comes to certain like hardware related things. Or you run the risk of looking like the comments of virtually every Hackaday article, which is always full of like angry people pointing out how some detail of it is wrong. So it's dicey territory to get into like basic soldering and stuff, because there is a right way to do like production soldering if you're a technician and you're doing this all day, and it makes those people really mad when you don't do those things. But I am not a soldering technician. I don't put together prototypes like all day. I put them together as needed, and they just gotta work, so. It's very interesting getting into making hardware stuff because not everybody feels the same way when it comes to just putting together something that is simple, functional, and works. Anyway, yes, I think that is going to be... Oh, wait. Check the port forwarding article on Null Byte. Oh, yeah, there's some stuff on that. So that's all the time we have for questions today. If you've got other questions about operating systems, if you've got suggestions for us to cover on the stream, please let us know in the comments on the YouTube channel. That's SecurityFWD on YouTube. You can go to hackingwithfriends.com to take a look at all of our content. And you can also sign up for our email list there. And when we start doing giveaways and stuff, you will be signed up to get a notification. Also, make sure to subscribe and push us over the top of 9,000 subscribers. Why don't you? That'd be just great.
Push us over 10,000.
Please, yeah, do it. Share it with your friends.
10,000.
And then if you're looking for some other great content, make sure to check out the Varonis brand channel and our sometimes co-host Killian, who's been doing the threat update where you can find... Oh, wait, no. Yeah, no, that's it, right? Yeah, okay, good. Which I was getting it confused with Shannon Morse's show because we work with her too. But you can find out how real companies are responding to cyber threats and what they're doing about them. It's a great way of peeking into what companies are hit with on an everyday basis from a cybersecurity perspective. So it's really great, and you should check it out. You'll also see that Mike is going to be doing a new live stream, but we just realized that the Monday's President's Day. So he's not going to be working Monday. So our next live stream with Mike is probably going to be the next Monday instead. We'll let you know as we go on, but unfortunately we're going to move that because we forgot it was a holiday. Yeah, so enjoy your Monday. Unfortunately, Mike won't be there, but next Monday he should be, and you'll be able to take a look at the new CISSP certification study hour is what we're calling it. So yeah, thank you all for hanging out with us today. As always, Friday's really fun, and thank you, James, for spending another Friday with us, going through all the cool stuff that's happened in InfoSec this week and pointing out any cool or interesting tools we found this week, although it looked like we didn't find any this week, so whoops. A lot of news.
There's
a
lot of fun news.
Cool. And as always, thank you to Zam, our community moderator, for keeping the chat together and helping people out in the chat, and also feeding us some of these great topics. He did a great job of kind of briefing us on some of the stuff we shouldn't forget about. And yeah, I appreciate that. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks again. And yeah, bye.